Okay, so I think there'll probably still be a few folks that are going to be filing in. Hello, welcome. I see quite a few people coming in, which is awesome. Yeah, just again to reiterate, I'll just go ahead and kick it off, I guess, while people are still coming in. So welcome everyone. To those of you who are new to the webinars that we are doing this week, welcome. These are the 2020 Virtual NYC Service Year Career Expo webinars. And so we've already had some awesome webinars earlier this week, and we will continue to have some this afternoon, and then also tomorrow and Friday will be the last day that we'll be offering webinars. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marianne Brain. I'm the NYC Service Year Support Coordinator. And yeah, we'll be helping to put together the rest of the webinars the remainder of the week. But today we have a presenter with us, Megan Tennis. She's here to talk to you about using your AmeriCorps Education Award. But before I just, turn it over to her, one more brief reminder, please make sure you keep your microphone off. Most of you have been doing a great job of that already. Just to eliminate background noise while she's presenting. But yeah, feel free to utilize that chat box. Say what program you're from, and whether you're a current member or an alumni. But yeah, I'm going to now kick it over to Megan to speak with us today.
All right. Hi, everyone. So my name is Megan. I'm currently working at NYC Service. And just so you all know a little bit about me, I served in AmeriCorps for 2 years with City Year New York. And I've been working at NYC Service for the past four years or so. So excited to talk to you all about how to use your Siegel AmeriCorps Education Award. Things are a little bit different this year for members who are currently serving. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the beginning. But just before I get started, I just do want to make it clear that I am fully not an expert in this. And at the end of the day, a lot of these decisions about how your education award can be used, none of these are made by me. These are all made by CNCS and the National Service Trust, which is like the organization that actually holds the money for you. So I'm going to give you a lot of information, most of which is on the CNCS website in a lot of different places. I kind of consolidated it all together, and then some other just anecdotal things that I've learned from working with AmeriCorps programs for a while. So at the end of the day, just make sure that you're talking to CNCS and talking to your own individual program to make sure that the information I'm telling you makes sense for you. And yeah, if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat box. I'll be looking at that and answering questions throughout. All right. So just a little background about the award itself. It's named after Eli Siegel, who was one of the pioneers of national service and actually the first CEO of the Corporation for National and Community Service. And kind of high level, the education award can be used for two main things. That's either to repay qualified student loans or to pay for current educational costs at eligible post-secondary educational schools or institutions. And I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about kind of what each of those words mean and how they can change where you can use this education award. So since 1994, over $3.3 billion in education awards have been awarded, but not all of that money has actually been used. There are people every single year who earn this education award, and then don't use it for whatever reason, I feel very strongly that everyone should use it, even if you're not planning on, you know, returning to undergraduate or getting a graduate degree. There are so many ways that people can use this money, and you earned it, you served, so you should use it. This year, so for current members, it could be up to the amount of $6,095. Just so everyone knows, it increases every year based on what the maximum value of the Pell Grant is every year. But for your individual case, just make sure you're talking to your program about what the exact amount you're going to be receiving is. It can vary based on the program type. If you're in a state and national member, if you were 1,200 hours, 1,700, 900, there are a lot of different things that could make that amount different, but the maximum amount that anyone would receive this year is $6,095. So in 2020, there are some things that are a little bit different. So I'm going to talk kind of about what I know, what CNCS has said, but for any members who are currently serving, make sure that you're talking to your program about it. They all should have shared this information with all of you. If they haven't, please reach out to them just so that they can talk to you about how COVID-19 is impacting the really specific ways that you're able to earn your education award. So CNCS has a specific COVID-19 website, which actually has a lot of information on it that's really helpful. But big information for this is just for people who are currently serving. And it's basically the same for state and national Vista and NCCC. So if you're not able to either serve your full hours or serve your full term, and you are exited from your program with what CNCS calls a compelling personal circumstance, which right now they're kind of letting programs say that COVID-19 is a compelling personal circumstance. They're saying that, you know, if you're unable to serve your full hours or serve all of your days because COVID closed your host site or you're not able to serve as many hours, it is still possible for you to earn either part or your full education award. So for state and national corps members, if you serve less than 15% of your total hours, you are not eligible for any part of the education award. If you serve between 15 and 50% of your service hours, and you're exited for compelling personal circumstances, again, just make sure you're talking to your program so that they can kind of tell you what their policy around that is. The amount of the award would be proportional to the number of hours that you served. So what that means is, let's say you served 25% of your total service hours and then you needed to be exited from the program. If you were exited for compelling personal circumstances, you would be eligible for 25% of that total award amount. And that's for anything between 15 and 50% of your service hours. If you've served more than 50% of your service hours and you're exited for compelling personal circumstances, CNCS is saying that people are eligible for the full award right now. We don't know how long this policy is going to be out there for. We're pretty sure it's for any member who's currently enrolled in the program because obviously COVID-19 is impacting all of us. So just make sure that you're talking to your program and that you know exactly what their definition of compelling personal circumstance is at this time. But that's a big update only for people who are currently serving. And it's basically the same thing for Vista and NCCC. So if you had to early terminate or, you know, if you had to be exited before you're finished, it's the same 15 to 50 and then over 50%. Does anyone have any questions about that? I'm not seeing anything in the chat box, which is good. So again, if you have questions about those specific things, I definitely encourage you to talk to your individual programs about that because it looks different for everyone. But that is what CNCS has said to us about it. Okay.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah.
What you said that people can leave if they have a compelling circumstance. What if you leave and you don't have a compelling circumstance but have completed more than 60% of the program?
So that's one of the things where you should talk to your individual program about that because I don't know exactly what that would be, that's something that the program has to decide when they're exiting. They have to say whether or not someone is exited with a compelling personal circumstance. So CNCS has just said that it is up to the program to decide what is considered compelling. So you should just talk to your individual program contacts about all of those things. All right, great. Yeah, and there's just a lot of other small parts of this. So just make sure you're talking to your program, looking at the CNCS website. Just try to make sure that you're educated about this, because obviously we want everyone to receive their full education award if they can. Okay, again, two main categories: current educational expenses and repaying qualified student loans. Yes, to answer the question about if you have more than 50% and finish but don't have the full 1700, more likely than not, you would be able to receive your full education award. Again, you just need to talk to your program to say, like, what information do you need to exit me with a compelling personal circumstance. I think most programs are being, pretty flexible with people right now, because we know it's really unrealistic for a lot of people to be serving their full service term, depending on what your service looks like. So I don't want to say yes or no to anyone, because I am not the one who's going to be exiting you, unless you're one of the NYC Service AmeriCorps members, then I'll be exiting you. But for everyone else, just talk to your program about it. So I don't want to say yes or no. All right, so just some other things to know is that, you can use it either for current educational expenses or to repay student loans, or to do both. You can use the award all at once. You can use it in 100 different increments until it's all used up. One thing is that you have 7 years from the date that you earned it, so from the day that you completed your service, to use it, or else it expires. There are some circumstances in which people can apply for an extension, but they're pretty limited. It's like if you were like in active military deployment or some other things, you can check the CNCS website for that. But generally, 7 years from when you graduate. So we're going to start with current educational expenses at eligible institutions. So each of those means something slightly different. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. Biggest thing is eligible schools. So the main thing to know is that any school that you're trying to use this money for needs to be considered a Title IV school, which is most schools in general. So most schools are Title IV schools. Basically, what it means is that they need to be able to offer and accept federal student aid, because this is federal money that you're going to be sending to them. So the schools that usually are not Title IV are some of like the smaller private trade schools, or, I know some people have tried to use it for certain coding programs, but depending on how they get their funding, if they're a super small school, they just may not be getting federal money for that. You can go to the Department of Education FAFSA website. They list all Title IV schools. So anyone, any school that you complete a FAFSA for would be a school that you can use it for. Again, for trade schools, just check to see if they're Title IV. Just another thing about trade schools is just make sure you're also looking at community colleges, because sometimes they offer the same focus areas as trade schools, but it can be cheaper. So just make sure that your school is able to accept this money before you do tuition. I had alumni reach out to me and say, hey, I signed up for this coding school. How can I use my education award for it? And then I had to tell them that they couldn't use it for that school, and then they needed to figure out how they were going to pay for it on their own. So just make sure that the school can accept the money before you accept the school. There are some kind of overseas schools that are considered Title IV. So if you are planning on going to a school overseas, that could also work. There are also, if you are attending a school that has a study abroad program, you can also use your money for that. There are also certain programs that just do kind of overseas programming, like volunteer or service learning programming, and you can also use your education award for that. There's one called Global Service Corps, but there are quite a few other programs that you can use where you would be abroad, but your money, would be sent to a school that's in the United States. I got a question about online courses and if you can use it for that. I think similarly, as long as the online program is through a Title IV school, that should be fine. You just need to, again, check to make sure that the online is not through, a private program that is so small that it doesn't accept Title IV funding. So they need to be accept federal funding. They need to be able to accept federal funding. That is the one really strict rule that they have about these things. So you just need to check. And you can call the school and ask, are you Title IV? And that's probably the easiest way to figure that out. Or you can check the website, which I have a little link right there, which you can click on. All right. So educational expenses kind of varies based on these two different things, whether it's a full degree program or if you're taking, separate courses that are not part of a larger degree program. So main thing to know is that it can cover anything that's considered cost of attendance, which really means that it doesn't need to just be tuition. So you know how when you, like for undergrad, they're like, oh, the tuition is $30,000 a year, but the cost of attendance is like $55,000 a year because that includes tuition, books, room and board, all of those other things. This money can be used for that larger definition of your educational expenses. It's a Department of Education guideline for these degree and certificate programs about what the cost of attendance is. So just make sure you're talking to, financial aid offices to see if it can cover things beyond your actual tuition. Similarly, if you're taking, adult education or continuing education, there are other things that are considered cost of attendance. So you could use it for rental or purchase of books or supplies required by all students. Just make sure you're talking to them. They have a little more flexibility with these adult and continuing education courses than full certificate programs. But again, moral of the story is like over communication is better in a lot of these cases because you want to know what is allowed and what isn't allowed before you decide to join this program and then end up needing to spend thousands of dollars of your own money because it isn't covered by the education award. So current educational expenses, really that means that it can only be used for things and expenses that incurred after you began your service. So it can't pay back old tuition bills that are from before you started your AmeriCorps service. So it can only be for expenses after your first day of AmeriCorps service. And that's also a pretty strict rule that they have about these things. So just make sure that you know when you incurred these costs and that you're not trying to pay back things that you cannot pay for. So overall, for current educational expenses, make sure they're Title IV, make sure what you're trying to use it falls under cost of attendance, and make sure that it is only for expenses incurred after your service began. Student loans are a little bit different, so we'll talk about student loans after this. So we'll make sure to talk about everything with loans, which is actually much easier than current school. So any questions about current expenses at schools before I move on? I have a little more information about them. Something else that's just important to know, again, when you're communicating your school, is that when you send money to schools, I don't know why, but the National Service Trust sends it in 2 equal payments. So again, just make sure that your school knows that. So if you send $1,000 to your school to cover tuition, they're only going to get 500 in the beginning, and then they'll receive the second 500 halfway through your term. So, there have been people who ended up getting charged late fees because the school is like, you only paid half your tuition, and then there's a lot of back and forth. So just make sure that if they're expecting the full amount of money before the program starts, that they know that by law, it's sent in 2 equal payments. So they're not going to get it all at once. And that is only for current school. For loans, your money gets sent when you want to send it. I don't know why it is this way, but it is. All right. Well, just another thing to kind of look at, if you're not aware, there are a lot of schools that are considered education award matching schools. The benefits greatly vary school by school. There's a full list on the AmeriCorps website. They just need to offer at least one $1,000 match or scholarship to at least one AmeriCorps alum each year, which is not a lot, but it could be helpful to know. So, just an example, Syracuse will be awarded a scholarship equal to half of cost of tuition to qualified students who have participated in AmeriCorps. Again, if they have no limit to the number of awards. So depending on the school, it could be more beneficial than not. Here's just a list of like New York State schools that currently offer education award matching programs. I know for, schools like NYU, I think they offer one partial scholarship every year to one alumni of AmeriCorps. So it's not, a huge deal. For some schools, they'll match or they'll give you an extra $1,000 if you use your education award there. Just, it doesn't hurt to check if you're going to be spending the money at a school if they have some other benefit for AmeriCorps alum. Okay, so that's the end of current school expenses. So before I talk about student loans, just want to make sure no other questions about current schools before I talk about loans. Great. Okay, student loans. Main thing to know is that it needs to be a qualified student loan, so it needs to be a federally backed student loan. Really, most loans that you received through your school, through your undergraduate or graduate university directly, when you do the FAFSA and you get certain loans that you can take out every year, those loans are usually fine. The specific list of eligible loans are here. Most people have Stafford and Perkins loans. That's a lot that people kind of got for undergraduate university, but here's the full list. There are, some graduate loans, nursing, student loans. So these are all the loans that are eligible, which means that private loans are not eligible. Even if you got a private loan that you used for higher education, doesn't matter. They won't let you use it for private loans. It can only be federal backed loans. Yeah, and if you're not 100% sure, just talk to your loan provider to make sure that you know what type of loan that you have, whether it is federally backed or private, because we want to make sure you know where you can use it. Just something else to think about when you are sending money to your loan provider, just give them a call beforehand and just let them know that they should be expecting this money. Also, think about and kind of talk to them about how you want the money used. So I made a mistake when I sent my loan money. I just kind of sent it to them, but didn't talk to them beforehand. And instead of using it to pay down the principal balance, they just put that money to be paying ahead my future payments. So it's like, oh, you're paid ahead in loan payments for the next 2 years, but that's not what I wanted the money to. I wanted it to go to the actual balance. So make sure you talk to them so that if you have a specific way you want the money to be used, that they're going to be using the money in that way. Also, just know that there could be a slight delay between when the money says that it's, approved on your My AmeriCorps account and when it actually shows up on your loan provider account. These things take time. So don't, totally freak out if it's not there within 24 hours. If it's been a week or two, maybe you should be concerned, but usually it just takes a while for those systems to talk to each other. Yeah, so loans are actually much easier. As long as it's federally backed, you can use it whenever you want. You can use whatever amounts that you want. I know my sister used her award where she just sent what her monthly payment amount was to her loan provider every single month. She's still doing that. So she would just send, each month she would log into her My AmeriCorps account and say, oh, I'm sending, I don't know, $250 to Great Lakes Student Loans. And then that's just her way of paying her monthly student loan payments for a while, which is nice for those of you who are out of that 6-month grace period from loans. Yes, you can use it to pay your loans monthly. Any other questions about student loans? And different from education expenses, they don't break it up. They send it all at once. So whenever you send it, they should get that right away. All right, great. So actually receiving the award, you receive it after you've completed your last day of service and you've completed all other program requirements. Usually it'll show up in your account within 30 days of your final day of service. That's kind of the deadline for these things. Big thing is you do not see this money directly. You don't get, a check for $6,000. It's all digital money that is held in this thing called the National Service Trust, which is a trust that holds your money. So it's all online, and it's on your My AmeriCorps account. So if you have not logged into My AmeriCorps since you enrolled in the program or since you graduated, just try logging into that website so you can make sure that you know what your login is, because it can be a process if you get locked out of your account. So log in, make sure you're able to log in for current or alums. We can talk about public service loan forgiveness a little bit later. If I don't talk about it, remind me about it, Gabriella. Okay, yeah, so you're going to go to the My AmeriCorps website. Yay. It has a few things that are important. This is a lovely graphic from CNCS. You log in. The submission is originally sent to your institution. Usually they don't need to talk to each other too much, but sometimes they do. To actually use it and log in, once you go to your My AmeriCorps website, you'll see on the side, there's this little section. So you're going to click on My Education Award. That's where you're going to make the Education Award payment request. And on the homepage of that, you'll be able to see any previous payments that you've made. You'll be able to see what your total amount that you have left is. And then from there, you're going to select the payment type, whether you're paying for education expenses or you're doing a loan payment. You're going to tell them the amount that they're authorized for. Then you're going to click on this search for institutions to search for where you're going to be sending the money to. Especially with current educational expenses and loan payments, sometimes when you look up the name of an organization, you'll see several different listings for the same organization that are all slightly different. So that's why it's important that you're talking to, your school or your loan provider beforehand to make sure that you're sending the money to the right place. So, for current education expenses, some schools, they'll have like the fiscal office that shows up, but they'll also have the bursar's office that shows up. And if you send it to the wrong place, it can just be a whole long process. So make sure you're sending it to the right place. You'll check all these boxes, then submit. This is what that homepage will look like. So you'll see, you used it for education, you used it for loan payments. This is what that looks like for the 2 equal payments. You can see here, this person did 230, but they split it. So it's split between 115 here and 115 there. So this is where you'll be able to see all of your payments. And for the requests, just make sure that once you submit your information, don't just leave it and forget about it. There are times when things will be delayed, and it's just important to know that you don't get any emails from My AmeriCorps when something is confirmed or something is denied or something has been pending for 3 weeks. They don't send you any communication about it. So it's really up to you to make sure that you're logging into the website and that you're seeing what's going on. Sometimes it'll just say pending for a long time. And then you may need to go on, a hunt to figure out whether it's something that AmeriCorps needs to do or something that your school or loan provider needs to do. So just make sure you're checking the website. Make sure that you're answering all of these questions. Who am I sending my money to? How much do I want to send? We're going to talk about taxes a little bit. Also, timing of payments. I would give it at least a week or two to kind of be fully processed. So sending payments earlier rather than later, I would say, is always a good case with these things. AmeriCorps can be kind of slow about stuff. For extensions, I would check the AmeriCorps website. If you just Google AmeriCorps Education Award extension, there's some information. There's also a national service hotline, which has a whole group of people who are just there to help talk to you about the Education Award, and I have the number at the end of this presentation. So just some fun information about where the Education Award has been used. The Pace University, surprisingly, has actually gotten the most Education Award money out of any school in the United States. I don't know why, but it has. These are the other kind of big schools that have been sent Education Award money since the award was started in 1994. So the top 10 in New York makes sense. Here's kind of the next 10 highest Education Award receiving schools. But I really wanted to just show that there are a lot of different places you can use this money for. So you can use it for culinary school, you can use it for the film academy, you can use it for the botanical garden, which has classes that are surprisingly expensive. There's barber schools, like a school of locksmiths. So even if you're not planning on going to graduate or undergraduate, there are a lot of places that you can use it for. Match amounts vary school by school. I just check the My AmeriCorps or the National Service website. A lot of them don't have the best matching programs. I feel like it ends up oftentimes being smaller schools that have better matching programs for some reason. That's just something I have noticed. So yeah, use your Education Award. Just another kind of thing to talk to people about, something that I totally didn't do when I was done with my service, is that after you're done with your term, AmeriCorps will pay for any interest that you accrued on your loans while you are serving, which I don't think a lot of people use this benefit. It is you can only qualify for it after you complete your service. You just similarly log into the CNCS website and click on Create Interest Accrual Request. The payment is considered taxable income, just so you know. And for COVID-19, they have a whole, will I still qualify? Most cases, yes, if you were exited with a compelling personal circumstances. But again, like most things, just check the National Service website before you make any final kind of decisions about these things. Nice like this, Create Interest Accrual Request. And that's only after you finish your service. So you just need to log in after you have been fully exited from your program. Same thing is the way that you do a forbearance request. You'll, select which term of service you are submitting this payment for, search for your institution. This would be the loan provider. Check all those boxes, submit the request, and then they will pay that for you, which is great. Okay, let's talk about taxes. So, I am not a tax expert. My level of knowledge about tax is that I I'm a volunteer tax preparer with New York Cares, but I'm not an expert at all. What I do know is that your education award, unlike most and basically all other scholarships and fellowships, is subject to federal tax in the year you use it, along with the interest accrual payments. For any alumni who are in AmeriCorps, we're always encouraging people to call their representatives to let them know that we feel like it's ridiculous that this education award is subject to federal tax. There's, a few pieces of legislation that I need to check on the status of. I feel like Christy would know more than I would, to kind of make the education award not subject to federal tax anymore, but it is currently subject to federal tax and is considered extra income. So I don't know how long you have to submit your interest payment request, to be completely honest. I don't know if they have time limits about it. I haven't seen anything about time limits anywhere. That doesn't mean they don't exist. I think you may just need to call that national service hotline, which can be helpful or not helpful. So for the tax payment, so in January, the year after you use your award, like all other tax documents, that's when you would get that. So you're going to get something called a 1099 miscellaneous. You will either get it in the mail. You can also download it from your My AmeriCorps account. If you use less than $600, they're actually not going to mail that to you. You'll still be able to find it on the website. But even if they don't mail it to you, you still are supposed to put the income in your tax return, even if it's just $5. So yeah, you can't withhold a sum from your education award and use it to pay it for other taxes. It's just considered non-income that hasn't been taxed beforehand on your taxes. So you will get taxed for it. Just one thing that is really important to know about it is that there's the student loan interest and the education award payments. Oftentimes will be grouped together. There is a way to deduct the student loan interest payments. All student loan interest that you're paying, you should be able to write off on your tax return. So you should just make sure that you can figure out how to separate that money from each other so that you're only taxed on the education award part. Yes, you do have to document any amount of the education award that you're using and put that into your taxes in the year that you use it. So if you use your education award in 2020, you need to enter that information in your 2020 taxes. And if it's over $600, CNCS will send you this document that lists all of that information for you. If it's less than $600, they're still going to generate it, but you just are responsible for logging into the My AmeriCorps website and downloading that form yourself. Another thing to just keep in mind is because this is considered taxable income, there are some people who have ended up putting themselves in a higher tax bracket because they used their education award and it moved their income up into another bracket. So this is something that people need to do a little calculating on their own to figure out what is the way that you can use this that is both most beneficial to you in the way that you're using the money that you earned, but also isn't harming you by making you pay even more taxes. So here's the current tax brackets and rates for 2020. So let's say that you're serving in AmeriCorps right now and you end your service in June or July. So you earned, I don't know, $12,000 this calendar year. Depending on the job that you accept. You just need to figure out, okay, if I'm making that salary for 6 months, what's the total amount of money that I'm going to make this entire year? If you're close to this amount, you may just want to think through whether or not it makes sense to use your full education award. Because if you get moved to this next tax bracket, then all of your income would be taxed at this higher rate. I mean, between these two, it's only 2%, so it's not a huge deal, but still, no one wants to be taxed if they don't need to be taxed. So the calculation is really going to be up to individuals to make sure that you're not putting yourself at a higher bracket if you don't need to. The cash payment instead of the education award is only for VISTA members. So VISTA members have up until their 10th month of service to decide between the education award and the cash payment. I don't know the exact amount off the top of my head. I think it's around $1,800 for current VISTA members, but you would need to confirm that amount with your program. But yeah, that's only for VISTA. Okay. Any other questions about taxes? So it's very annoying that your education award is taxed, but it is. So just want to be very transparent about that with everyone and know that you could potentially be paying more in taxes the year that you use your education award. So I have to check to see what the current legislation is that's going through about changing the tax. I think I may be completely wrong about this, but I know there is currently a bill that's somewhere in the legislative process that's actually trying to greatly expand AmeriCorps, partly to help with the COVID-19 crisis. And I believe part of that bill is to make the education award not taxed anymore. So, I mean, I think in general, current members don't do this. Alumni, call your representatives and encourage them to support this AmeriCorps bill, which is expanding national service to more people. I think part of that bill is not taxing the education award. And hey, look, thank you for putting that in. Education Award Tax Relief Act. Great. So there's currently a bill going through Congress somewhere to expand AmeriCorps to increase the living stipend. And I'm pretty sure not taxing the education award is also part of that. So alumni, not current members, you can't do activism as a current member in your role as a member. You can encourage your family to call. So just give them a call. There's the place to find the Education Award Tax Relief Act. There's also, another bill that's specific to AmeriCorps going through right now, trying to expand it. All right, great. Any other questions? Okay, so transferring award, just quickly, if you were over 55 when you started your service, there is a way that you can transfer it either to a child, stepchild, foster child, grandchild, or step-grandchild. Pretty limited cases where you can transfer that. Just, again, look on the AmeriCorps website to get information about that. I don't remember if you do it online or you need to submit a form, but there's a way to transfer it if all of those things qualify or you qualify for all of those things. Just another thing to know for people who are filling out the FAFSA is that your AmeriCorps stipend actually shouldn't count as income when you are filling out your FAFSA. So there's like a student finances thing. All this information is on the slides, so you can look through it, but just make sure that there's a way to deduct your AmeriCorps stipend. So, if your only income in a year was AmeriCorps and you're able to deduct that, then you could show for your FAFSA that your income was zero, which means that you would be eligible for better financial aid packages, which is great. So you just need to enter it on the FAFSA and they'll calculate that whole thing for you. Just, it could depend, if your parents still claim you as a dependent or if you have other assets, it may not be as helpful, but it's always good to make sure that you're accurately submitting your information. A lot of information on the CNCS website. There's also just a few other, non-traditional uses of the Education Award, other resources for finances. Just quickly want to talk about other alumni things, but again, just talk to people before you send the money, because everything will take longer if things are written incorrectly. You don't get emails about anything. Just keep checking the My AmeriCorps website. It's a little more difficult than it needs to be, but it's your money, so you should use it. Just a few alumni things in general. If you're not, make sure you're looking at the AmeriCorps alum website. Register there. They have some benefits, ways to connect with alumni, ways to access like free tax filing and discounted insurance. Marianne can also talk at the end about work that we're doing with AmeriCorps alums and the ways that we're trying to connect AmeriCorps alums in New York. Marianne, I don't know if you want to just talk about that right now.
Hi, yes. So overall, NYC Service has been partnering this past year with the NYC AmeriCorps Alums chapter. So if anything, that's just more of a way to stay connected with alumni from your own core year, but then also other AmeriCorps programs all across New York City. And we've been doing that in different ways by offering a lot of opportunities having to do with networking. Like often those will look like either happy hours or sometimes can be a little bit more formal in the way that we've done panels or speed networking events. More recently, obviously, a lot of these things have been virtual, but we've tried to make sure that we keep those opportunities open for all of you to make sure that you continue to strengthen that community. Also, another thing in general that we've been trying to do is strengthen the NYC Service Year community all around with, again, more virtual opportunities. So we do have a LinkedIn group also that encourage you guys to all join the NYC Service Year Network on LinkedIn. And that's another space where we're trying to encourage people to, post about opportunities that they know that are coming up, either job opportunities or other ways to connect with one another. Again, more virtual networking opportunities. But yeah, pretty much we continue to help with service opportunities post-service year. So we've connected a lot with current service year members who do service projects for MLK Day. There's plenty of other opportunities, but if you have more questions, you're more than welcome to email me. But also, I'm just going to do another plug. We have another virtual roundtable event happening this Friday as part of the week of the Career Expo. So you can check out that at the Career Expo website and sign up there for that. You can just speak with past members and alumni about their experiences and their current career paths.
Yeah. And get invites to great events like this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes. Public student loan forgiveness. Just another quick thing. There is this thing called Employers of National Service, which are organizations who have said that they value employing AmeriCorps alum in some way. So that's also a great place to look. If you're currently looking for jobs, there's a website there that shows who's listed as an employer of national service. This is just a small sample of who they are, but they're organizations who have specifically said that they are interested in hiring AmeriCorps alum. So take a look at those. Just call the National Service Hotline if you have questions about things. Look, there's the link to the Service Year LinkedIn group, all of this info. I make very few decisions about education awards, even within our program, very few. So just talk to your program, call the National Service Hotline. So just quickly, the question about public service loan forgiveness. So the main thing about public service loan forgiveness is that I'm pretty sure that if you put your loans into deferment when you were serving in AmeriCorps, I would need to check, but I don't know if that year of service can end. Please, people, correct me in the chat box if I'm wrong. But I know part of that public service loan forgiveness program is that you need to have been paying your student loans during that entire time. So if you put your loans into forbearance during your AmeriCorps service, I don't know if that year would count toward your public service loan forgiveness. So if that time would count. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's kind of what I know about public service loan forgiveness. I also just know that program in general has been really hard for people to get access to. So there's just a lot of stipulations that I am fully not an expert in, so I don't want to tell people things that are potentially incorrect. So that is actually the end of my presentation. So I will definitely stick around for the next 7 minutes. If people have questions that they want to ask, you can put them in the chat box. You can, take yourself off mute and ask me any questions that you have. But it was, great to talk to all of you. Hope you learned something about the Education Award and that you are able to use it. I know it can be a more confusing thing than it needs to be. So just, do your research, know how you're using it. But thank you all. I hope you have a really good rest of your Wednesday. Okay, great question. Da, da, da. Oh, great. Okay. Thank you, Bridget, for that information. That's helpful.
I can answer the last two questions too. Yeah, so I'll be following up with all of you with the slides from today's presentation, and also this webinar is currently being recorded and will be available on NYC Services YouTube page in the upcoming weeks, and we'll make sure to notify you all about that as well. So just keep a lookout for that. Yeah. But yeah, unless there are any other questions, I just want to say thank you, Megan, for taking the time to present to us today. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for attending. If you, again, enjoyed today's webinar, there's still 2 more. There's one right after this coming up. I actually think it's sold out, but there's another one happening this evening from 5 to 6. About boosting your LinkedIn profile. And then we have another 3 tomorrow and 1 more additional opportunity, the roundtable opportunity that's happening as well. I'm just going to link in very quickly again, just to remind you all, if you are interested in signing up for any of those opportunities, please visit the website that I just copied into the chat. But yeah, unless, Megan, do you have any other things to plug?
No, that's it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and take care and stay safe.